All right, powered by GoGoat Sports in partnership with TSN. It is season 4. This is episode 21 of the Ray and Dregs Hockey Podcast, presented by our title sponsor, Canadian Club Whiskey. And Ray, for anyone listening, I'm just going to paint the picture for them, right?
Oh, I'm sure you are.
It's not unusual for you to be on location. You know, last week we did the podcast. You were in Germany visiting Landon. You had a great backdrop, by the way, in Germany. You're in a hotel room. This is clear because, you know, you've got the kind of bright but sort of muted light in the background.
Sure.
The window with the 1970s blinds right
Very
over
nice,
your left shoulder. You know, your face is, you know, it's not as lit as what it would normally be. So I'm going to guess, because I know your schedule, that you're in Dallas. Is that accurate?
I am in Dallas. I have a very nice room. However, they seem to be short on lights. And I do have this little swingy light that kind of goes across like this. So I'm looking for how's that, Dregs? Does that look better?
No, not really, but no, it's fine.
There is no help for this setting. So
it's
in Dallas.
The mirrors on the ceiling that is distracting to me.
You should see the carpet, the long shag. Oh, it's spectacular.
Okay, so you are such a clean freak, and I'm kind of somewhere in the middle between average and Ray Ferraro when it comes to being tidy and trying to just keep control of the chaos. Because I'm in my family, extended family. Obviously, normally I would travel more than anyone else in my family. And this is where my brain comes from, because, you know, I've got quirky ideas and ask sometimes ridiculous questions and the shenanigans and all that. So I can't remember if it was my brother or my sister or whomever, but they asked, do you ever take a blue light in to one of these hotel rooms and like scan the carpet or the beds or any of that? I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. Like, why would you do that? So you mentioned the carpet, and that's the first thing that came to mind.
Dregs, I saw, I don't know what it was, like 2020 or 60 Minutes decade ago. I don't even know.
Yeah.
And they took a blue light into a hotel room. Oh my God. The thing, it was like the Northern Lights. I'm like, this thing is so gross, man.
No. You never get it. Our wives will never stay in another hotel room again if you ever come home with the evidence of that kind of nonsense. As you're checking in, of course.
Yeah,
because
no,
if you've been there a couple of days, it you know, I mean, then things get a little sketchy. So, well, you enjoy your time in Dallas. We're looking forward to that game. It's Toronto. It's the Dallas Stars. And we're going to lead headlines brought to you by our friends at Boston Pizza, talking about the Stars and the Maple Leafs. And here we are. We're talking about two top 10 clubs. What are they, 4 and 6 or 5 and 6, Toronto and Dallas? So, again, I joked about it on Thursday in the last episode that we're running out of things to say when we're talking about Marner and Jason Robertson, because their point streaks continue to go. But what is that now, 23 goals in 25 games for Jason Robertson? So no matter how you slice this one, you've got two top 10 NHL teams, two teams playing pretty well, and two superstars that are going head to head. I don't care who wins. I really don't. I'm sure you don't either. But I would like to see both their point streaks continue.
I think it's just amazing that that they're at the length of streak that they're at. And you know, I sometimes shake my head at the media in our game that start to kick back on the amount of attention that these guys are getting for their streaks.
I know.
Like why is everything a bitch and a complain? Like, what Marner's done something in Toronto that nobody's done in 100 years. That's a long time. That's even longer than some of these media guys have been grumpy. Like, it's amazing. And what Jason Robertson does, not only does he get a point every game, he's scoring a goal every game.
Yeah.
The difficulty of that is remarkable. So what these guys are doing is amazing to watch. Kirill Kaprizov just came through Dallas on the weekend. Now his streak's at 12 games. Like, 12 games is amazing. These guys have added a touchdown past that. Like, it's phenomenal to watch. I'm really looking forward to it, and they do it in such different ways. I mean, Marner's like that buzz of energy, and he's like tenacious and all over the ice, and Robertson has zero pulse. I just love the way he gets the puck, and he looks like he's at a summer skate, like he never is in a hurry. And he's scored a couple of goals now, Dregs, where he dekes the goalie and goes past the goal. He's below the goal line, and then he just reaches out and tucks it in the net, like you did in Bantam. And he does it with there's just something to the way he can stay calm with the puck.
Yeah.
That is his kind of superpower. Marner's, it's like his creativity and his agility, and so they do it completely different ways. And here they are with just amazing spots.
So the Quizmaster at TSN thought he had this enormous scoop, the comparison of all comparisons, right? He calls me on Monday, and I'm half paying attention because I'm doing some quick shopping. Anyway, he says, "You know who Jason Robertson reminds me of? You know who he reminds me of?" And I'm like, "Yes, go ahead." Luc Robitaille. Yeah, Luc Robitaille's a really good comparison. I said, "Really?" I said, "Well, you should have listened to the Ray and Dregs podcast about 4 episodes ago, because Ray made that comparison a long time ago." And I said, "Hey, by the way, who does Mitch Marner remind you of?" "Oh, geez, I don't know." I said, "Pavel Datsyuk, according to Ray." And he was so into it because how the Quizmaster loves to have those type of historical conversations. But part of the air just siphoned out of the balloon when I said that you'd mentioned Robitaille in comparison to Robertson like a couple or a few podcasts ago.
So here's the two things I took from that right away. One is you love to pull the arrow just a little bit of the Quizmaster. You love it. The second thing is I don't know how long we've known each other. You never talk about a phone call with the Quizmaster without doing your Quizmaster voice. Your imitation every time cracks me up. It's not even very good, but it doesn't matter.
It's not.
It cracks me up every time. Darren.
Wow. Yeah. So and not to get off track here, but we are now. I was talking to Carl Koliakvo and Aaron Korolnik on the morning show, 10:50 on Monday, and they were talking about why Toronto is so bad 3-on-3. And I said, well, I got to believe that Sheldon Keefe is sitting down with Matthews and Marner and Nylander and Tavares and all these players, right? And trying to formulate, look at video. They practice it. It's not working. And I said, it reminded me of during a playoff series years ago, Babcock in Detroit. I walked by the coach's room or the video room, and there's Lidstrom with Zetterberg and Datsyuk and Babcock looking at a tiny little monitor and hitting pause and hitting play and hitting rewind. And they were dissecting the power play. I mean, that's kind of what you do. Yeah. And I asked him about it, and he's like, well, they're the best in the game. Like, why wouldn't I want their opinion and their experience? But I couldn't tell the story without kicking into Babcock mode. It's impossible. They're real good players, and it'd be crazy. It's so ridiculous.
I just asked Nick, what do you want to do, Nick? And Nick tells me, and
that's outstanding. All right, Montreal and the Vancouver Canucks. Like you, I mean, we had a bit of a preamble here before getting going, and you said you basically flipped the game off. The Canadians are leading the Canucks 4-0. It feels like it should be game, set, and match at that point, right?
Well, this is where it was, Drake.
Yeah.
It's 4-0. I'm in Dallas. It's late.
Yeah.
I got to go to bed.
Yeah.
And so I don't even text Cammie that I'm going to bed because she's at the game. It's 4-0. She's not going to answer me anyway. So I just go to sleep. So phone rings at 12:30 local time here and in the morning. And she's like, "Oh, sorry, you're out?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm asleep." I said, "I didn't want to text you. I mean, the game's going crappy." And she's like, "Yeah, we won." And I'm like, "What do you mean you won? It was 4-0. She goes, "There were goals going in all over the place." So I didn't even know the score till this morning because I said, "Okay, I'll talk to you in the morning." And I went, I roll over and I'm like, "They won? it was like 4, like what the hell is going on? But isn't that kind of the way the league is now?
It is. Yeah.
Like there's nothing that, like 4-0 is over. The game's over. I'm in Dallas, of course, as I mentioned. They're losing to Minnesota 5-1 the other day in the third period. So I turned the game off and I'm like, yeah, I'll scan through the rest of it because I've got the game I want to see. And then I check my phone, it's 5-5.
Yeah.
In the third period. Like it's really unbelievable. So I didn't even see the last half of the Canucks game. I was like, this thing is over. So
yeah, and I mean, you had the Seattle LA game recently. What was that 9-8? I mean, we've had some bizarre ones. Patterson with the overtime winner. So let's see. Sometimes not to read too much into a game, but the Canucks collectively in their last handful have at least shown the pulse and the ability to win some games. And the fact they storm back in this one, we'll see what direction it takes them. But a wild game as we've described. But the undercard has, of course, Brock Boeser and the Vancouver Canucks searching for trade. And I was corrected on the weekend in following up on this because, when it was first reported by Elliot Friedman on Saturday, I'm like, well, nobody was surprised, but it's interesting, right? Because you're like, okay. And not to misrepresent what Elliot said, it's just that normally you've got a situation like that where it's the player that says, okay, I've had enough, or the team that says, we're not going in the direction we would like. We'd like the opportunity to trade you. How do you feel about this? In fact, it's both. Both the team and Brock Boeser feel like it's a good thing to explore change for Brock Boeser. Won't be easy from either side because, he still has some term left on his deal at 6.5, 6.6, somewhere around there.
6.6,
it's up there. And if you're Patrick Allvin, you probably feel like Boeser's going to be moved and he's young enough and has enough talent. He could pop 2025, right? Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah. I mean, I think when I look at Boeser, I think of a guy that can score and will score. The pace of the game is always going to be a challenge for him. And that's not a secret anywhere.
No.
When I look at, to explore this, like Columbus moved on from Oliver Bjorkstrand in the summer, and that was a couple of draft picks. He had 28 goals last year, but they had, they were going to bring in Johnny Gaudreau, and they had Line A, and they had to cap clear a little bit of money. And so in the way the game is, they're no team. Fans look, I think, for the most part, and lots of us media too, I guess, look at the immediacy. But if the Canucks like Kuzmenko, they got to sign him eventually.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's only so many dollars to go around. And pretty clearly the team needs a brush up, right? Like they've been very clear about that. So Boeser's maybe the first of these chips and players that you look at and go, can we make a deal? Is there something there? I mean, I don't even know. But that's, I guess, what Ben Hankinson, his agent, gets involved with. And they start working on scenarios. Maybe somebody pieces something together that works for both sides.
Well, and look, it always makes me chuckle when media start tweeting out pictures of the scout list at certain games, right? Like, and it starts like 5 games in, where I guess some people are just amused or intrigued by the number of teams that scout other teams' games. I mean, it's what pro scouting does. That's what they do. But that game last night would have been a must go to, I would think, for any club that's in the market for something, especially a forward, right? Because we know Montreal has, a few intriguing possibilities on the trade front, and you throw a name like Brock Boeser into the equation, and I would expect that's going to gain some interest.
Okay, so here's another part to that too, is that, you mentioned Montreal and their backlog of forwards. Yeah. You mentioned Boeser. St. Louis has now fallen off the other side of the hill. They started great, They fell down. They got great. They fell down. Eventually, they're going to have to make some decisions on people that are going to be unrestricted free agents at the end of the year. Older guys. I think they got 11 guys that are in the last year of their contract. So pretty soon, what seems like, oh yeah, our team, our fans can see a trade in the future. The market gets clogged.
Mm-hmm.
And the acquiring team is like, I'll talk to you, and I'll make the best deal that I can, because more forwards, in this case, start to show up as available.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to throw one more name into the mix, and we've talked about this guy a bunch of times to this point of season 4, going back to season 3, and that's Jake Chychrun. And the reason I mention him is just a small update, right? We can see how well he's playing, he's producing. So he looks to be in good health, but my understanding is there's a blitz going on this week. And what that means is that the agent involved, the Arizona Coyotes, are one more time circling around to say, okay, boys, let's reset. Where are you on your level of interest?
Does that to you, Dregs, does that say, okay, this is coming to a head? Is that what that means?
Only because, and I'll pinpoint one team, and I don't, look, I mean, the Ottawa Senators have been linked to Jake Chychrun for months, if not longer, and they haven't made the move. And it's because the ask is prohibitive. I mean, Billy Armstrong is still stuck on 2 first-round draft picks, having to be part of it, and then a prospect, and then you're taking back a contract at least to offset a little bit, right? But now Artem Zub is gone for probably a month. He took a puck in the face with a fractured jaw. We saw how poorly the Sens played without Artem Zub when he was injured previously. They just got Shabbat back. Like it just, and now we're 25 plus games into the regular season too, right? Right. So it does feel like there's a higher level of urgency here, and you've got the sale of the Sens looming. There's no way that Pierre Dorion isn't feeling the pressure to get this team back to driving upwards. They're playing a bit better, but maybe he's worried about his job with new ownership looming. I mean, that would be natural, right?
Sure.
So
how would you know what the new guy is going to do? You wouldn't.
Exactly.
So here's the thing. Here's a thought on that, Dregs. Here's a thought on that. Is what about if you're Ottawa and they've got some young prospects that they really like a lot.
Yeah.
Chychrun is not a prospect.
No.
So it's fine to say, well, we really like these prospects. You've got, what's Chychrun, 24?
Yeah, 24, 25. Yeah.
Yeah. So
yep.
You're not like blowing out a prospect for a guy that's 30 years old.
No.
So even if you trade one of your more exciting to you prospects, you're getting a 24-year-old, 23-4 minute defenseman. Like, I don't find those as risky trades. The only risk would be Chychrun's health.
Well, for sure.
And and you do your work on that and you make the best educated guess you can make. But I wouldn't, like, don't hold on to a prospect if you're Ottawa. Gee, I think he can be really good. Well, I think, and pretty soon you don't have a job. Like, you got a 24-year-old guy standing there. If you can stomach the 2 first rounders, that's the big point for me, is you got to put a good prospect in there if that's the one that tips you over, because I think he could really be a difference maker for Ottawa.
Yeah. Well, and just to smash the point home, I mean, again, if you're even remotely worried about your job, and you probably should be, most managers are, unless you're so established that, okay, it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. If you're worried about your 2 first-round picks, then you're thinking 4 or 5 years down the road. So probably better to get her done now. Speaking of a team that should be in rebuild, Ottawa coming out of that, the Philadelphia Flyers. Now, they beat the Colorado Avalanche Monday night. But most, and I don't know where you sit on this, Ray, most outside the organization see that they need to renovate at least, if not full-scale rebuild, which was that's why the John Tortorella hiring was so curious to me, right? Because Alain Vigneault couldn't get the most out of that group as they were making their way. There seems to be holes throughout that roster. Chuck Fletcher has tried to plug some of them. Yes, I know they've been stung by the injury bug and all of those things. But, I mean, what's your assessment of this Philadelphia team as you look from the outside in? Did they continue to put the Band-Aids and plug the holes, or do you just chomp down and go into rebuild mode?
Well, if it were me, it would be going to rebuild, because I just don't think they can get there with their current roster construction. They don't have enough prospects coming. They don't have enough players that you look at could be difference makers for them. The problem is, it's one thing to say it and it's another to do it. Like, how do you do it? Like, if you decide, okay, one of the older guys, Kevin Hayes has got 3 years left on his contract. Well, that's great. You want to move Kevin Hayes out if that's what you're choosing to do. Where are you moving him? Who's got an extra $7 million in cap space? Or you make a trade and it's $3 million. Nobody.
Yeah. No.
So you get yourself stuck. That's why I thought their signing of Ristolainen was really curious to me. They had traded a lot for him, and it almost seems like, oh, I traded a lot, I got to sign him. And I'm like, no, you don't.
Yeah.
Like, you don't. And so now they got Ristolainen for 5 years. They lack speed and skill, and in today's game, if you don't have those things, you're going to be in trouble. You really are.
John Tortorella getting a bit surly too, right? Not that should be even remotely surprising. We know what Torts brings. I think he's a good coach. I think he can be effective, but he just kicks himself in the shins from time to time. And it's so early in his tenure with the Philadelphia Flyers. And that market, just in pro sport, as you know, in general, can eat you alive. And it doesn't matter who you are. Star quarterback, star center, decorated head coach. You got to be somewhat careful. Honest, nothing wrong with being honest. Nothing wrong with being an emotional guy. But to just flat out say, you guys are asking dumb questions. I mean, it's amusing. We chuckle. But I feel like you need a little bit more tact than that, given where you're at in your relationship with Philadelphia Flyers fans.
Well, sure. I don't know what the question was. I don't know what the previous 4 questions
I think
were.
It had something to do with effort. Yeah. And I don't know that there were 3 or 4.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know, but that his patience is like at 0. And most times it's not very high. And so it's easier to be patient at the start of the year. Like, I was there for their home opener, and I thought, geez, he really did a great job with a pretty big throng of media asking him a bunch of questions that he didn't have any answers for because they hadn't even started yet. And I was like, wow, we kind of got through that pretty good. Well, here we are, we're in December, and the patience bucket is probably a little low at this time and got some holes in it. But there is a point where the player, coach, whoever's on the other end of the question, it's hard to be patient. I guess I am defending people, but like when Jack Hughes answered, the question he got there about, do you think you guys can be a little more consistent? They'd won 8 in a row at that time. Like,
yeah.
I don't know what the hell is he supposed to say. And I thought he said, "Oh, we're on an 8-game heater."
He handled it perfectly.
Yeah, but not every question's going to be to the media's defense. Not every question is going to be an award-winning question. I mean, like, you're doing the best you can, and all of a sudden that maybe it doesn't come out the way you frame it. And there are times where patience is, you got to be able to find it a little bit. And right there in December, he's got none. Torts has got none pretty clearly.
No. And if it was an effort-related question, sometimes as a reporter, especially if you're on deadline and you're trying to hammer out, a post-game column on this, an article, and you're watching this game and you're questioning the effort. You want to make sure that you understand the context and you understand what the head coach sees or the player sees and maybe those two things match. Your eye test matches their experience, and then you're golden. Sometimes they don't, and you're still golden because that's what you saw and that's what you experienced. But it feels like something. The old dam is going to break yet one more time in Philadelphia, and it'll probably bring a wave of interesting tidbits our way to follow up in headlines.
Well, that goes straight up to what ownership thinks and what ownership sees the future of the next couple of years of the team, right? Like that's a big question in a market that's gone sideways.
Yeah. Quick thought, because I don't know if you caught the moment. You may have been traveling, but I'm a sucker for the returns, and sometimes they're a little tacky, right? Like a player has a half a season with a team and there's a video acknowledgement for him. Whatever, right? Last night, though, the Vegas Golden Knights go to Boston. I mean, two powerhouse teams coming head to head. Some injuries on both sides, but nice moment for Bruce Cassidy, right? As the Boston Bruins faithful recognized everything that he brought to the city of Boston, the Bruins organization as head coach. And you could tell that was a tough one for Bruce. I mean, he was sucking on his bottom lip because it was starting to quiver. It was a nice moment for sure.
It was. And, a really successful tenure in Boston, and Boston's off to a great start. I do like when there's a understanding of what was accomplished, even if it wasn't your ultimate goal. I am also just thoroughly amused by the number of coaches this year that got punted to the curb, that ended up somewhere else, and they're all off to just amazing starts. Like, I don't even think I can remember a time where Cassidy goes to Vegas. Vegas is great. Montgomery comes to Boston. Boston is great. Bonus goes to Winnipeg. Winnipeg is doing great. Pete DeBoer comes to Dallas. Dallas is doing great. Like, this never happens like this. No. And it seems really interesting and odd to me to see it.
No, it's terrific stuff. And still early in the season, but when you look at the teams that you just mentioned, it's also easy to visualize they're not coming backwards. Maybe a bit here or there, but we know this traditionally, just looking once you get past U.S. Thanksgiving, there's not an ample amount of change. There can be jockeying, as you get into the later stages of the second half. So it's nice to talk about Dregs, the good stories. Yeah.
I'd like to add one good story if I could, for people that hadn't heard it. Yeah. And it's the four kids in Brandon.
Oh boy.
The Brandon Wheat Kings of the Western Hockey League. These four players were driving, and they saw a man standing at the bridge and looked like he was distressed, and they came across him and asked if he was okay, and the guy said he wasn't, and they asked if they could help or get him some help, and their care and their interest saved this fella. And really, I don't know, you probably have more detail to it, but when I saw the story, I was like, you know what, damn, that's pretty awesome of those kids.
It is. I was just scrambling quickly here for the four players, which I can't find. I know Nolan Ritchie was among them. And reason his name jumps off the page for me, Ray, is because his father, Darren Ritchie, was a really good player for the Brandon Wheat Kings back in the day. And that was a day when I was traveling with the Wheat Kings and doing play-by-play. So some good people there, obviously. And as they say, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So those are your headlines. And once again, we thank Boston Pizza. Hey, thanks for tuning into our YouTube channel. And while you're here, why don't you do us a solid? Hit like and subscribe.
Yeah, you'll get access to all the latest uploads. You can stay updated on the latest news and interviews from the Ray and Dregs Hockey Podcast.
It only takes a couple of seconds. And from what I'm told, it helps with our algorithm thingamajig. Anyway, we appreciate the support.